Hello, all, and welcome to a Freelance Life feature episode. So, this is where we invite guests who actually know what they're talking about. And today we have Chantal Mare, and she owns her own tax consultancy, FinFae Consulting. So, welcome, Chantal. Thank you for joining us. And thank you also for taking on this taxing role for the rest of us. And by the way, Megan was the one who made me say that really lame joke when we were talking about the intro. So please blame her for that. So to kick off, do you want to tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do for freelancers like us?
Okay, so what I basically do, my background is actually not in freelancing. So I've been in corporate for the last 17 years, but my passion has always been small businesses and community, very much community driven. So I have, in the last few years, I've started focusing on helping small businesses and freelancers with their accounting and tax issues. And also, I have been involved in MPOs and social development and doing a bit of MPO grant applications and funding applications and that kind of thing. So my heart is very much with community and, seeing people succeed is my passion. So, yeah.
Okay, that makes me understand it a little bit more than, if you'd said tax is my passion, we probably would have had to end the podcast now because I wouldn't have had any follow-up questions. But community is something we can understand and get behind.
You need to be very special to have a passion for tax, I think.
So, I mean, I'm sure working with freelancers, it certainly, for the most part, isn't something that we're passionate about or very clued up about. A lot of us find it very overwhelming. We find it to be quite a grudge. So let's start with a bit of general advice. What are some of the common mistakes that you see as freelancers making related to tax?
Sure. So for me, I think definitely the first thing, we are so focused on day-to-day servicing our clients and getting the job done that we often forget to lay a solid foundation. So to be efficient in anything that we do, we need to have a proper system in place, and we need to have a proper system of tracking your income and expenses. So that's where a lot of people fall short. They often leave it until very late in the process where you've been maybe doing this for a year or 2 years, and now you have to start sorting out things because you realize, okay, my taxes are behind, I need to catch up on things. So definitely the first step for me, or the often overlooked thing, is getting a good system in place from day one. So a good system can be anything that fits into your specific rhythm, your specific framework. Spreadsheets are fine, but we are moving to the cloud, so it's always better to try and do something that is more mobile and readily available, like on your cell phone. So there's lots of apps and things that make taking your work with you so much easier these days, and where you don't actually have to enter slips and things manually, where you can just scan them and the app will record the expenses and things for you. So it's worth looking into all those different things that are available. Obviously, if you're starting out and your business is quite small, it makes sense to just start on a simple spreadsheet and then progress from there as your business grows.
And on that note, sorry, which apps would you recommend for like someone small, like a one-man band or a small business? Which ones are affordable but also scalable?
Yes. So for me, I typically like to recommend Zoho Books because it's free. The very basic free plan on Zoho is quite comprehensive. You can do your invoicing, your quotes. You can feed your bank statements into Zoho. You can even scan and upload your expense slippies so that you don't have to physically keep all your slips. If you remember to take a photo and upload it to Zoho and match it to your expense, it's all there. And the nice thing about that as well is you can give your accountant access. So on the free plan, you can have access for yourself and you can grant your accountant access. So when it comes to tax season, they already have access to your bank statements and everything on Zoho. Just keeps everything together nice and neatly. You can have it on your phone, you can have it on your laptop. So it's a super simple and user-friendly platform to use, and it is very scalable. So if your business does grow, there are scalable options. They even have CRM that integrates with the program as well, if that's something that you do need at a later stage. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, we like free. Free's good.
Yes.
with potential to pay if we need to, but we do like free. So thanks. That's really helpful, I think, for a lot of freelancers like myself. I do still have a spreadsheet. I've got Zoho books, but I haven't gone full in and put my bank statements in. So yeah, I think I need to put that on my to-do list just to make my life a lot easier. What do you use, Meegs?
I'm on Save One, and that's pretty expensive. I've just forked
Yes.
out uh, just over 6.5 grand for the
Yes.
year license because I need it in a foreign currency as well. So, I
Yes.
mean, that is quite quite pricey. My accountant actually suggested, because I'm a registered Pty, that I should look at the FNB. They've got that free for my business stuff built on the back end, but I found it incredibly user unfriendly. So yeah.
Yeah, the FNB app, I find it's quite basic. So if you are working with foreign currencies and stuff like that, and if your business is quite expansive, then and you are also looking at expanding, then I don't think the FNB app is maybe a viable option for you. So Sage is a great software, great program, but it's more for your medium-sized enterprises and things like that. So for small businesses, it does become quite costly. It is maybe worth looking into Zoho, because I think the one where you do get the foreign currency, it's something like 100 Rand a month for that one on Zoho.
Mm. I'll
Awesome.
have to look next year because, like I said, I've just literally
Great.
last week paid. So there you go.
Enjoy it while you
January
can.
January 2026.
Yeah.
Then, well, I suppose I'll get to do all the exciting stuff like exporting historical documents and stuff,
Yes.
CSV files.
So something else that we wanted to speak about, Chantal, that Meegs brought up. So she's a Pty Limited as a freelancer. I'm a provisional taxpayer. So we wanted to chat a little bit about the benefits, pros and cons of each from a tax perspective. So yeah, if you can just maybe give everyone an idea as to what the differences are from a tax perspective, and then what's right for which kind of freelancer.
Sure. So it's very situational. It depends on your specific business and whether or not you're going to scale, or if you are scaling. And so it's very dependent on your specific situation. So I can just give you some pros and cons on each of these. So a provisional taxpayer, you don't need to register with the CPIC. So you are trading basically in your own name. You don't need to do any annual returns with CPIC or beneficial ownership, which is the new thing that came in last year. You are also not you're not complied to do annual financial statements if you are a sole proprietor. So in that sense, it's a lot less paperwork. But the drawbacks there are your personal tax rate can go up to 45% if you are a sole proprietor. Then there's also no separation between your business and you as a person. So your business liabilities are your own liabilities. If there is ever a case where your business runs into debt, that is your personal debt, and your personal assets could then be at risk. So that's basically, in a nutshell, for a sole proprietor. So a way to think about it is like, say you're renting a house. It's a flexible option at first, but over time it does become expensive, and there's fewer financial benefits in the long run if your business does grow above a certain turnover rate. Okay, and then for Pty Limited, the company tax rate is flat at 27%, which is obviously a lot lower than the personal tax rate, which is 45%. Your business and your business, you are seen as two separate legal entities. So whatever happens in your business stays in the business, and your personal assets are protected at all times. Okay, and then also for Pty, it's a lot easier to deduct certain expenses in a company than what it is to deduct it in your personal capacity. So yeah, and then the other thing for a Pty is also that sometimes you will find that larger clients are more inclined to want to deal with companies that are registered. So that's often why people register a Pty. Then when it comes to paying yourself out of the company, drawing money from your business, you can pay yourself a salary. But then you also have the additional option of paying yourself a dividend out of your business. So dividends are not taxed in your personal capacity. When you draw dividends from your company, it gets taxed at 20% withholding tax in the company. So in other words, the company will pay over that 20% tax on your behalf, and you just get out your dividends. So there's options and things to play around with when you do have a Pty to structure your salary and income in the most tax effective way. But the drawbacks, now we get to the drawbacks. With a company, there's obviously a lot more compliance things that you have to keep up to date. You've got your CPIC annual returns that you have to file, and your beneficial ownership, that's also annual filing. And you must have financial statements each and every year. So yeah, that's just a few things to keep in mind when weighing up whether or not it's plausible for you to register a Pty.
So I'm curious, thanks Chantal, that was super helpful. And there are a couple of pointers I hadn't realized there at all. So I'm curious, Meegs, what made you go the Pty route?
Two things. So the being separate from my business, like if we've all had that one client who tries to screw you in some way, and I don't want to lose my house or my car over a dodgy client. That's the one thing. And the other
Yes.
was that this was just the advice that I got at the time. I spent a lot of money on a lawyer, and so I decided I'd better follow his advice, and that was the advice that he gave me. In hindsight, like it is cost, like Chantal said, it does cost me a lot. I've got the CPIC. I have to pay an accountant to load tax every month for my pay as you earn, etc., etc. But what is quite nice is that I've got a set salary. So the business pays me a salary. I know I can budget according to that salary. And the dividend thing is quite nice because you can loan yourself money and pay yourself back, but it's still your own money, but you get it at a lower tax rate, etc. So this model is working for me, but I don't really have anything. I wasn't trading as a sole prop before, so I can't really compare it to anything.
So, yeah. Chantal, would you say, probably the best course of advice is for people who aren't sure to maybe contact someone like yourself, or who do we go to get that kind of advice for our circumstances?
Definitely see if you can contact an accountant to look at your specific situation and your business setup and your specific industry. It's worth paying that money and getting a professional opinion on whether or not it will benefit you to register a company. Because once your company is registered, you can't just decide, oh, I don't want this company anymore. It becomes a really difficult process to deregister a company once you've started. So it's really worth spending the money, getting professional advice on whether or not it's worth it for you. And that tax person or accountant will also be able to tell you whether or not it will be a viable tax decision for you to register a company. So I sometimes have clients that come to me that do freelancing, say they do consulting, and then they've got a separate Pty Limited, but the company only makes like 40,000 Rand a year. So to me, that doesn't make financial sense to have a Pty that only turns over 40,000 Rand a year, because you have to pay so much in terms of compliance and your provisional taxes. So it's very situational, you know.
And that, brings me to another sort of tax model, is that of turnover tax. So can you tell us what it is, and who it's for and how it works?
Okay, great. Yeah, I also often get this question on turnover tax. So turnover tax is basically a simplified tax system. And this is for small businesses or individuals that earn less than R1 million per year. So instead of taxing your profits, which is your income minus your expenses, SARS will only tax you on your turnover of your business. Okay, so the way the tax is structured is according to a sliding scale. Up to 335,000 Rand of turnover is taxed at 0%. So if you make say you make 330,000 Rand, you will pay zero tax on that under the turnover system. And it goes up to 3% tax for the amount above 750,000. Okay, so it's only beneficial if you are a freelancer or a small business with very little deductible expenses. Okay, so if you are, say, a virtual assistant or a designer, or you have an e-commerce store and you don't have a lot of overheads, it then becomes viable for you to explore this option of turnover tax. Also, if you are looking for a more simplified tax system, it also becomes viable because you don't have to track your expenses so aggressively, because it's basically just based on your turnover. There are unfortunately exclusions. It sounds very great, but there are exclusions. So for SARS does not allow personal service providers to register for turnover tax. So personal service providers can be accountants, lawyers, architects, engineers, anyone in a consulting field, IT, journalists, those kinds of trades or freelancing people don't qualify for turnover tax. There is a clause that states if you employ at least 3 unconnected employees full-time, you can apply for turnover tax, but the likelihood that your turnover will be under R1 million at that point is very low. So by the time you can afford to employ 3 people full-time, your turnover will most likely be more than R1 million. Okay, so, and then also obviously, if you are running a kind of business where you have a lot of deductible expenses, say you've got a turnover of 750,000 Rand a year, and your allowable deductions is 600,000 Rand or 500,000 Rand a year, it's then more viable not to go the turnover tax route, because it can then actually work out more expensive because you get taxed on your turnover and you are not allowed to take any deductions off.
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process of trying, mainly because I hate the admin. And it sounds like for me, I would pay less tax because I have very few, I pay for some software here and there.
Yeah.
I buy a new laptop that depreciates, every 3 years, or, my expenses are really low. So I end up paying quite a lot of tax. So yeah, I've got an application going through this week, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So I feel like it might be a bit of a gray area where I sit with my services because I'm a writer. I don't fall under any of those listed professions. But I'm providing services to other businesses. So yeah, I don't know where it's going to end up, but I thought I may as well try. And if it means that I'm not having to track my expenses and do all of that, that is one thing off my plate, and I'd be really stoked. So I will.
So definitely, if SARS sees you as a personal service provider, they will decline. But if you have, I don't know how many clients you have. So if you have a very robust client base, then they might not see it as a personal service provider.
Okay.
And then also, if you have more than one revenue stream coming in, if your revenue is not solely on just consulting, if there's different revenue streams coming in, they might not see it as a personal service provider then.
Okay. That makes me, I think hopefully it'll work. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
So, but also the tax deadlines for turnover tax, it's exactly the same as provisional tax. You've got August and February.
Okay.
The only thing with with turnover tax is you are not going to use e-filing. So it's a very backward system. You have to complete manual forms and send these off to SARS. So
breaking my heart, Chantal.
At no point can you log into e-filing and draw a statement of account. You are physically going to fill in a manual form. So twice a year, you're going to do your provisional tax payments, whatever your tax practitioner calculates for you. And then your actual income tax return is called a TT03, and that will be sent off manually to SARS via email. And then we have to hope that they actually process your tax return.
Okay.
There's no way to check at the moment.
That's crazy.
Online. I know it's very backwards, but that's where it is. And as long as you have proof that you've done your tax returns, your proof of payments, your submissions, everything, should be fine. It's just you have to be very particular with keeping all of your correspondence when it comes to
oh gosh. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully that'll move.
Up for you, Shay.
Thank you. Oh dear. Okay. And just thanks for that reminder. Also, all the provisional taxpayers out there, do remember that deadline's coming up end of Feb and end of August. I think a top tip that I've always had is just to have it in your calendar a whole month before, so that you can get your ducks in a row and you're not leaving your accountants in a flat panic and liable for penalties yourself. So
it's also very important. Sorry, Shay. I've also had a recent, so coming back to the provisional tax, I've had a recent case where a client came from another accountant to me, and she was advised to short declare on her provisional tax. Okay. For cash flow reasons, she took that advice and she's short declared provisional tax. Now we have to do her actual income tax, and the penalties for that is so steep. It's up to 20%. Well, it is 20% for the short declaring of provisional tax. So please, if anyone advises you to short declare provisional tax, please just reconsider that, because in the long run, that will actually create more of a cash flow issue in your business.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty scary. And so what I do, and what I'm sure a lot of freelancers do, is sorry, Megs, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So I was going to say, I put away money every month into a savings account so that I know when provisional tax time comes around, I put away the amount that I would pay if I didn't have any expenses. So then I'm actually putting away a bit more than I need to, and then I have some bonus money by the time I have to submit my prov tax. So that would be my little tidbit, if you can, is to put away your 20, 30, 40%, whatever it is. Just make sure that you have it, that you can pay prov tax twice 100%. A year.
If you do have expenses and deductibles like that, I always say aim for at least between 20 and 25%.
Awesome.
Depending on your deductible expenses.
Yeah. Sorry, Meeks, what were you going to say?
I just have a question regarding minimum thresholds, because I know when we're talking about VAT, which is also a tax, you don't have to be VAT registered or declare VAT under a certain threshold. I'm open to
Yes.
correction. I think it's 1 million turnover.
Million. Yes.
Is there
Million.
a minimum threshold for, provisional taxpayers that they have to declare over a certain amount, or is it like as soon as you've got an income stream, you have to declare?
So if you are not earning a salary, you have to declare. It doesn't matter what your salary is, you have to, or what your income is, you have to declare that. So even if you're under the threshold, you're not going to pay tax, you still have to declare.
That's
Okay.
good to know.
I
What
think
is the
that's
current
important because I think
threshold?
yeah.
It's about 8,300 Rand a month.
Okay. So, I mean, some people who maybe have a side hustle, even if they're not earning 8,000 Rand a month on their side hustle, they should still be declaring that income.
Yeah, definitely. If you're working and you have a side hustle, you have to also declare your side hustle income and your deductible expenses for that.
Okay. So, talking about deductions, all of us would love to pay less tax, obviously. So, tell us, how can freelancers make the most of the available deductions?
Okay, so I think home office expenses is a very important one to touch on. So in recent years, more and more people have started working remotely, and a few years ago, you could deduct all of your home office expenses. SARS weren't too finicky as long as you had an invoice and you can prove that you're working from home. They would typically allow these expenses. So now, currently, they've become very strict with home office expenses. So it's now to the point where you have to have a dedicated office space in your house. So if you are working from a desk in your room or on your dining room table or from your couch, you can no longer claim home office expenses. So that is a very important thing to remember when it comes to deductible expenses. I've actually had a client where SARS has requested a 360 view of her actual office space. And she wasn't aware of this deduction, and she has her little office and she's got a couch, and it looks like a little lounge as well. So they disallowed it because it doesn't look like a dedicated office space. So when it comes to home office expenses, that's something very important to just keep in mind. Okay. Then
And also, sorry, adding to that, you
yes,
can only, so let's say your electricity is 2,000 Rand a month and
yes,
your home office occupies 10% of your home space, you can only claim for 200 Rand of that.
yes, your actual usage for
Yeah.
home office. Yes, 100%. Then obviously the other things that are quite straightforward, your laptops, cameras, any kind of tools that you use for your specific trade, any software. Also, one that I see a lot of people often forget about or overlooked or don't even know about is a S&T allowance. So if you are traveling out of town and you are staying over for work purposes, the SARS allowable deduction is 522 Rand per day that you are sleeping out for work, okay? And this covers all of your meals and incidentals while you are traveling. So I just find that there's a lot of people that are not aware of the S&T allowance that you can deduct if you are traveling for work. Then another obvious one is marketing and advertising expenses. So anything from website hosting, business cards, your social media, anything like that. Then another thing that's also often overlooked is training. You can put any kind of training that is related to your industry through your business. So it's any kind of online workshop, certifications, and any other industry-related training that you might want to attend. Business insurance is another one. So obviously, if you have equipment insurance, part of your car insurance in relation to business use, of course. And then another one is out and about insurance. So sometimes you will insure your goods for when you're out, cameras, laptops, and things like that. Also, professional indemnity insurance is also deductible. Then we've got another one we just briefly touched on is larger expenses for equipment. So anything over 7,000 Rand, laptops, cameras, anything like that, can be depreciated over the useful life of whatever that specific item is. Okay, then another I think the most important thing you can do for tax savings and also for saving personally is a retirement fund contribution. I don't see enough people utilizing that to its fullest extent, but to this day, it still remains the best way of saving for your retirement and also getting tax benefits.
And if I'm not mistaken, you're allowed every year, it's what, 27% or something? 27.5%.
27.5% of your annual turnover, up to a limit of 350,000 Rand.
And donations, what's the limit on that?
Donations is 10% of your annual turnover, but for donations, you must remember it must be donations to a registered PBO, and they will need to issue you with a valid 18A certificate for donations to be tax deductible.
Mm. And are there any others that you see people often forgetting?
Yes. So one that Megan just mentioned earlier, it's about a client not paying you or a client ghosting you or whatever. So oftentimes I also find that people are not aware, especially freelancers. We all know a registered business, you can write off your bad debts, but a freelancer can also write off their bad debts. So if you have a client that hasn't paid you, you are fully entitled to write off that expense as a bad debt, which is then recoverable through a tax deduction.
Oh. Sure. You're dropping some real knowledge bombs on us here.
Could I ask, obviously most freelancers, at least that I've interacted with, work from home. So, home office space is a thing.
Yes.
What about the sort of, load shedding, we haven't really had load shedding per se for a while, but like we went through that very bad load shedding phase where people were doing generators and all that kind of thing. If you install like a solar system, can you claim the whole system, or is it like just a part of the system?
Yeah, solar panels, it's only for the actual solar panels, and it's up to 20,000 Rand of whatever the cost was. And for that, they are also quite strict. Your installation company will have to provide you with a COC. I've had exactly the scenario that you are speaking of now. I've got a client that works from home for an international company, and during load shedding, she had to install some infrastructure at her house, and she couldn't get a COC. I'm thinking the people that installed the solar system, they were maybe not registered, okay? So they weren't able to provide her with the COC, and SARS didn't allow that deduction. So before you install any kind of solar, always check that whoever's doing the work for you will be able to provide you with a valid COC. Otherwise, SARS will not allow that deduction.
Yeah. And something like a generator, if you look at the costs, generators are much cheaper than solar, but you still need a COC if it's going to be wired into your DB.
If it's going to be wired, yes, you're going to need a COC for that. And then also, if it comes to a generator, again, only it would be the business use portion of that. So you won't be able to claim the entire thing. So it would be proportional to your actual workspace.
Okay. Cool. All my questions are answered.
Yeah, it's always, and also every circumstance again is so different. So I think that's where
Very good.
it's really helpful to have someone like you. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I personally would give freelancers out there with regards to their tax is get someone to do it for you. You know, like also from a time perspective, I mean, I know for you, e-filing, probably you can do it with your eyes closed, but for the uninitiated, it can be a bit of a learning curve. And where does this go? And how do I do this? So, you know, it's really money well spent to have someone in your corner to just handle it for you who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if people do want to, if need some help and do want to get hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can, if you do want to reach me, you can always send me an email. My email address is chantal@finfae.co.za. My name is spelled Chantal. Okay,
Awesome. We'll put that in the notes too, so that people can find you.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Chantal. That was actually not boring, which is exceeded my expectations. I think, you know, it's something that none of us want to pay more than we need to. We all want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So it's really important stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time, as I'm sure Meegs does too.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
And I just want to add one last thing. So it's worth finding someone to assist you with these things that don't mind answering your questions. So oftentimes you get people that are not keen on answering questions. They just want to do the work and get it done. So it's very important to find someone that wants to empower you so that you can make the best choices for your personal circumstances as well.
And I can totally, on that note, totally vouch for Chantal in that regard. I've used Chantal's services and she's always very kind to us useless and uninformed people and very patient and very willing to help. So I can totally vouch for that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that was, as I said, more interesting than expected. And Chantal, you've given us actually a lot to work with, and I think really helpful for not only new freelancers but established freelancers like Meegs and I to keep learning about these kinds of things. And when in doubt, call and help. So thank you so much, and your email will be in the show notes for people to get hold of you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.